First, I will explain about XPS and SIMS. There are two topics in this video, which is SIMS and XPS. XPS is a phase-sensitive quantitative spectroscopic technique based on the photoelectric effect that can identify the elements that exist within a material or covering its surface. XPS is powerful measurement technique because it not only shows the elements are present, but also what are the elements they are bound to. The technique can be used in line profiling of the element composition across the surface or in depth profiling when paired with ion beam etching. SIMS is the technique used to analyze the composition of solid surface and thin film by sputtering the surface of the specimen with a focused primary ion beam and collecting and analyzing ejected secondary ions. SIMS is the most sensitive surface analysis technique with the elemental detection limits ranging from parts per million to parts per billion. Next, we move to the process of the surface imaging and depth profiling for these two methods, which is XPS and SIMS. There are two techniques to obtain the XPS image, which is mapping and parallel imaging. Mapping is serial acquisition of image is based on two-dimensional rectangular array of small area XPS analysis. This method to measure the distribution of element or chemical state. Serial acquisition is generally slower than parallel acquisition but can collect a range of energy at each pixel compared with collecting only a single energy of parallel acquisition. Used in combination with a multi-channel detector, serial acquisition of maps can result in snapshot spectra being produced at each pixel. The thermoscientific K-alpha and NEXA XPS instrument can scan the sample stage to obtain image. Using this method, the analysis position is fixed and specimen surface is moved with respect to this position. For parallel acquisition, additional lens equipped with a two-dimensional detector are required. The photoelectron pass through lens 1 and 2 in the transfer lens assembly, producing a photoelectron image of the specimen surface at some plane within the lens column. Lens 3 is operated and its focal length is equal to the distance between the lens and the second image plane. Therefore, electron emanating from any point on the image will leave lens 3 on parallel path. The angle between the beam of electron and the lens axis will depend on their distance from the lens axis in the image plane. The electrons then enter the analyzer, which function as both an energy filter and a lens. If the analyzer deflection angle is 180 degrees, then the angular distribution of the electron is retained as they leave the analyzer. A lens 4 is operated in the reverse manner of lens 3, will reconstruct the image at two-dimensional detector placed at the focal length of lens 4. The electrons forming the image have passed through the energy analyzer and turning the analyzer to the energy of photoelectron peak. A chemical image is constructed. profiling uses an ion beam to etch layer of the surface. The combination of sequence of ion gun etch cycle with XPS analysis provide quantified information as well as layer thickness. Before removing material from a sample, a spectrum or a spectra is recorded from the surface of the sample. The surface is etched by starting an ion beam over a square or rectangular area of the sample. After the etch cycle, the ion beam is blank and another set of spectra is recorded. This sequence of etching and spectrum acquisition is repeated until profiling has proceeded to the required depth. If the sample is insulated, then equilibration period should be allowed between the ion etch part of the cycle and the data acquisition. This allows the sample surface potential to return to its steady state before data collection. I'm going to talk about secondary ion mass spectroscopy (SIMS) as it was good at pointing out when we do surface analysis. SIMS is an analytical technique based on the measurement of the mass of ion ejected from a solid surface after the surface has been bombarded with high energy primary ion. Based on the diagram, for SIMS, there are primary ion going in and the ion that come out, we call those as secondary ion. The mass or charge ratio of the secondary ion are measured with a mass spectrometer to determine the elemental, isotopic or molecular composition of the surface to a depth of 1 to 2 nanometer. Next, I will explain the instrumentation and technique of SIMS. Beside me, there is a very illustrative scheme of a SIMS setup. The following number given in a bracket refer to the respective figure shown. Generally, it consists of a primary ion source, a beam column to aim the ion beam at the target, where sputtering occurs. The secondary ions are then filtered by energy and ratio in electric or magnetic field and are finally detected by the electron multiplier or CCDS and fluorescence screen to obtain surface image. Why we use SIMS for deep profiling? Well, SIMS is generally used for the analysis surface. However, it can also be used for the bulk analysis of solid. SIMS offer a unique application for trace detection in semiconductor, analysis and deep profiling of thin layer or the imaging of surface. The strength in SIMS lies in the fact that all elements can be analyzed, isotopes can be distinguished, the large detection limits and the imaging of the lateral distribution. However, mass spectra in SIMS might get very complex. The reference materials must be very similar to the sample to be investigated, and sputtering yields are highly dependent on the chemical composition of the sample. Depending on the SIMS type, there are 3 basic analyzers. A sector field mass spectrometer uses a combination of an electrostatic analyzer and a magnetic analyzer to separate the secondary ions by their mass to charge ratio. A quadruple mass analyzer separates the mass by the resonant electric field, which only allows the selected mass to pass through. The time of 5 mass analyzer separate the ion in a field drift path according to their velocity. Since all ions possess the same kinetic energy, the velocity and therefore time of flight varies according to mass. It requires pulse secondary ion generation using either a pulse primary ion gun or a pulse secondary ion extraction. It is only analyzer type able to detect all generated secondary ions simultaneously. For your information, there are 2 main methods in SIMS, static SIM and dynamic SIM. In static SIM, a pulse primary ion beam is used and ultra-high vacuum conditions are needed. This
This method used to get information about the top monolayer of sample, protein sample, and organic material. Compared to dynamic zinc, a constant ion beam of night sputtering rate is used and only moderate vacuum conditions are needed. It is mainly used for the detection of trace impurity in sample, for example, semiconductor, and also for the deep profiling of element in samples. We have reached the end of the video, and again, my name is Nurul Haliza Binti Hashim.
And my name is Nadzirah. We would like to say thank you for watching.
I hope you enjoyed this video.